Hello, welcome to all my combo lords joining me in the combo classroom today. Might be a kind of noisy day in the classroom. We may consider shifting to the front yard or my room, because looks like they're doing some construction on some houses. When people gotta work on a roof or a house or something, gets quite noisy. So some of that's happening in the neighborhood. But it's still a nice sunny day in our combo classroom. Time for a little bonus video stream of sorts. I've been doing these all in live stream form due to condensing my editing time on the combo class episodes. There will be shorts coming back on this channel quite soon, but some of the first shorts I'll be putting on this channel are going to be me moving the ones that I tried putting on the combo class channel. The algorithm doesn't really like me trying to put the shorts on two channels. When you put them on a new channel, they get literally 1% as many views as if I had put them on this channel instead. So I'm going to move the 6 or so shorts that I put on there to here. You can't move them. I mean, I'm going to unlist them there and add them here. So to the short lovers, you may see 6 duplicate shorts, and because of that, I wanted to put a new one out first, so I'm going to put a new short out tomorrow, a brand new one, and a couple duplicates. They're not going to go to subscription feeds or notifications, so they won't bug people. And then we'll jump back into having some more shorts as well. Not all of them will go to notifications and stuff, because not everyone likes the shorts. I don't watch shorts myself. I like filming them, but to people who don't enjoy watching those, I understand. I'm not the biggest fan of them either. I'm most interested in creating horizontal videos, and I have way more ideas than I have time to film, and then I have way more time to film than I have time to edit all that filming stuff, because the editing per hour you film, it takes more than an hour to edit that. And so there's a little backlog, both in terms of ideas I have ready to go and in terms of filmed footage I have ready to go. But a lot of that will be coming soon. A lot of it's almost done with editing and stuff. And the next episode that I've mentioned will be related to some twists on the classic Collatz conjecture, or 3x plus 1 problem. My presentation on that, and of course, like many of my episodes, it'll begin with my version of explaining that, a classic open question, and then we'll move on to some extensions that many people have not heard. Now, today we're going to chat about a few other open questions, including one that was solved within the past year. Not fully solved, but a particular conjecture was solved. The name that came up in this conjecture is a classic we've mentioned many times, Paul Erdős. E-R-D-O-S. I still haven't done the live stream I mentioned I'll do sometime, or video about his life. He lived a very crazy, interesting life in terms of his hobbies and his habits and such. But we've mentioned many of his great open problems, and his name is going to come up many times because we're interested in open questions and ways to extend the current mathematical knowledge here. And he was a king of that. He loved open questions and would put bounties of money, not as a rich guy, like $50 bounties and stuff on particular problems that he wanted to see solved. He even set up an estate where, after he died, someone else handled the money and wrote checks to people who solved these conjectures of his. Now, I'm not sure how easy it would be to get a check if you were to solve one of these problems, but it's really not about nowadays the money. He had an interesting technique of motivating with the unfortunately loved concept of money. Money is boring, but like I've said, don't worry, folks. We'll probably be rich someday by not caring about money and just by hustling here and there when we need to and by working hard. Now, putting a bounty on a problem is pretty cool, though. And if I ever was rich, I would probably dedicate some of the extra money to go toward a specific charity or charities where we know we could help, say, poor people eat better or such. But some of the money, if I was ever rich, would go toward putting Erdős-like prizes. Now, he may have even inspired the Millennium Prizes that have $1 million bounties by bigger companies. And so Erdish's name will come up many times as far as a conjecture he was interested in that he put in a particular light. And one conjecture he made relates to a graph theory question we'll look at today, not graphs like we did in last stream. Last stream we did coordinate plane graphs with x's and y's, with equations that relate to x's and y's, and last time even the twist on polar coordinates, where we looked at more of circular effects based on radius and distance. But graph theory in this context is more like the episode I made a few episodes ago about what's called Ramsey theory. A graph here is really just a set of points and the way in which they're interconnected. Now, for example, if I have 3 points, a lot of different types of graph I could make here. Normally we would assume graph means these can have up to one line between each of them that doesn't have a direction. So I could have that could be one graph, that could be a different graph. We could also color things. We could color the connections and such. And in the Ramsey thing, we're going to assume that we're not having loops to themselves, we're not having double lines, and we're not having directions. So those things could be alternate forms of graphs, but we'll assume those aren't the case here. Well, if you make a graph and we color it in some way to see not only what are the ways things could be connected, but maybe there's multiple ways they could be connected. Maybe each of these dots is a person, and we want to know something like, if we're coloring the connections a different color, like we did in the Ramsey theory thing, maybe one thing means they're friends and another means they're strangers. Maybe if we had 3 colors, we would say best friends, kind of friends, and strangers, or friends, acquaintances, and strangers, or something. Now, an alternate way to go about this, instead of coloring the connections, is to have the dots be colored. I could say, well, here are my dots, and they might have a color inside them, and they're connected in this way. That's how they're connected. And then I say, well, this one's blue, that one's blue, and this one is red or whatever. It's white right now, it's clear. Now, then I could ask different questions, like which dots that are blue are connected, or make different analogies. Like now, instead of talking about the relationship between peoples, we're saying some people are friends, some aren't. The line means they are. Additionally, some people are doctors, and some are bankers, and some are a different profession, and some have no profession. And we're coloring the items themselves and seeing which way those could be connected. And there are many questions related to how we could color different graphs. Now, somebody also noted in the comments here real quick about an easier way to notify people on the Discord. I'll try and do that so that people know the Discord is a fun place for combo lords to chat. And I'm not great at tech, so usually I'm just like, hey, live stream coming up, by the way. But I will look into ways of notifying it more thoroughly on there. We're also at some point, once I get more help and more of a team assembled, going to be able to get to scheduled days for our live streams. But right now it's Chaos Land, baby, and we are on my bonus experiment channel where I do my random stuff and it's working great. We are, in fact, at a nice number of thousands of subscribers. We are at 163,000. Pretty awesome. And 163, of course it's in thousands, but the way it displays on the channel puts a 3-digit number then the K, and this 3-digit number is nice. You see, 163 has all these weird cool traits in number theory. Like, check this out. Let me pull open, we're actually going to pull open 162 to show, okay, 162 right here. Oh man, it's doing the frozen thing. I hate when it does this. This is so annoying. I need a tech wizard on the team. It always likes just showing a frozen image of like the last time I made a screen capture instead of letting me get a new screen capture. And then I have to make it look like Chaos Land for a bit while I adjust it. But like I already said, we're in Chaos Land on the bonus experiment channel. And while we have much fun learning to do here, you got to deal with the tech mishaps like I got to deal with them. So here we actually have gotten what I was looking for. And where's the right one? Okay, this is the right one, right? Okay, now we'll delete the wrong one and we'll put me back on top. So 162. We're just looking on what traits Wikipedia would choose to say. Couple cool traits, one or two, but they're kind of looking for the traits here. They're kind of like, I didn't have that much to say about 162, so I'm going to have to throw in some facts like that 162 to the 64th power plus 1 is prime, or things like that. How about 164? The next one we're going to hit. Similarly, not that much info about it. How about 163? Wowie zowie, do they have a lot to say about 163? Now, we're not going to go that detailed into this because this is not our main topic, but I just had to say the amount of Ks we're at is not only awesome as far as this channel being less than 1 year old, being a place I put my fun experiments, and spiraling to a large amount of subscribers pretty quick, but also just that this is a cool number. The most important ones we're going to look at are some of these later traits they mentioned. That the square root of 163, this is the really weird one we'll look at sometime, is the reason why e to the power of pi times the square root of 163 is really close to an integer. It's this point that many nines before it's a little under being 4 right there. Really close. And Martin Gardner did a prank on his column about that, and a good April Fool's Day prank where he claimed it was an integer. Classic. Now, also the fact that it's this thing called a Heegner number we will look at some point, because this is special as far as like algebraic number theory, and this is the largest of the numbers that have that a particular property, where its quadratic ring has unique factorization. But here we have the other ones, and then there's 163 as the largest. So, a lot of cool stuff. Here's more. 163 gets an article on what's called Wolfram Math World. They do not have an article for 162 or 164. And here they say it's very important in number theory. And because it's the largest number, that its imaginary quadratic field has a concept we haven't fully explained yet, but a class number of 1, which means, in very simplified terms, it can do easier, cooler things with factorizations, and it has a neater structure. So we'll look at that more. And what do you know relates to binomial coefficients, which are in Pascal's triangle, except that these binomial coefficients have an I in them. Whoa. Now, we'll look more at that in the future when we actually look at certain topics. But keep an eye out for 163, one of the coolest integers, weirdly enough. We could call it one of the more underrated numbers, because although number theorists love this one, the average person does not necessarily know that 163 is the coolest number in the 160s. So, looking now at our actual topic I was discussing, that was a little sidetrack, we get colorations of graphs and open questions. Now, one of these open questions, like I said, was solved within the past year. Last November, a paper was published regarding a conjecture that mathematician Erdős had made, and proving that a certain bound was in the place that Erdős predicted, and that his conjecture was correct. There are also many other conjectures that we may mention along the way that are not yet solved. Now, questions might relate to things like, for a given structure, what is the minimum amount of colors such that I could color it and not have any two of the same color connected by a line? Well, these can be known as chromatic numbers of certain graphs. And the actual problem by Erdős is a little different than that, but it relates to the overall concept. A lot of these are intertwined. Now, the chromatic number of a graph like this we could describe as such. Well, how many colors can I make such that I don't have any of the same color connected to itself? Now, if I have my lines not cross each other, they're not allowed to cross, then it relates to what's called the four-color map theorem. If I have a map, how many colors would I need to color different, say, states of America? If I color each state a different color, or each country in a different region a different color, how many colors does it take such that no two of the same color are touching? As that would be confusing to the reader of the map. Well, a lot of maps use 5 or more colors because they didn't dive too deep into the best way to do it, but it's possible with 4 colors on any of a typical planar graph map. And that was actually a controversial proof. We may have to do an episode about it sometime because not only is it a cool theorem, but humans were the ones to prove the 5 case, that it has to be 5 or less. But a robot proved the 4 case. It's a really long computer proof. Too many things the computer checked for a human to recheck them. And so we're basically trusting computers that it's 4. So it's a little controversial whether that's proven or not. And we'll go into that in the future. However, today, we're going to imagine our lines can cross. We're going to imagine we're talking about ways in which things can be connected, and where they land on the landscape is practically irrelevant. It's about the way in which they're connected. And so we can imagine them like people at a party who have certain relationships between each other. And in this case, we're wondering something like each person either high-fived or didn't. There's an on or off for connection-wise traits, and that each person has a different color, giving them some different trait, and that we're trying to minimize how many different colors we give to different people so that no 2 people high-fived with the same color for a given graph. Now, if I have a graph that is a certain type of graph that goes up out of the middle, and there's the middle just connected to all the others. So imagine this type of graph. This is one where we have a middle point, and then we have a certain amount that it's connected to, and no other connections apart from them all connected to the middle. How many colors would I need to make this so that no 2 colors were the same that touched? That would only take 2 colors, because if I make the middle one color and the outside's their own color, then no 2 of the same color are touching. If the middle was blue and everything else is red, success. However, what if I have what's called a complete graph, where everything's touching? Where my complete graph for 3, they're all touching. My complete graph for 4, they are all touching. And so on. Now the chromatic number is going to be as big as how many dots I have, because unless I have as many colors as dots, there's going to be 2 of the same one that are touching. And let me take a peek at our comments real quick, and then we're going to go into the specific questions we're asking right here, because those are 2 examples of types of graphs and the chromatic number they would have. Now, somebody mentioned a thunderstorm woke them up. Wow, hope everything's okay with your house and stuff. Weather can be pretty wild. Here where I live in California, we don't have brutal storms. What we have is earthquakes. I haven't witnessed an insane one in my life, but I've witnessed ones that knock things off shelves and such. And we get earthquakes, and we also get bad fires, although those don't affect my region as much because I'm sort of in the fog by the Bay Area. But we don't get other types of wild weather, but weather is pretty crazy. Now, lots of good questions and comments, and somebody mentioned a particular graph they want to see come up, the Peterson graph, and I don't know if this will come up in today's but we are going to take a peek at it because it was mentioned, and right here is the Peterson graph. And looks like Donald Knuth, who we've mentioned, one of the kings of studying different bases and other topics, said that the Peterson graph is a remarkable configuration that serves as a counterexample to many optimistic predictions about what might be true for graphs in general. So that's pretty neat, and it's not going to come up in today's episode, but I have heard the name come up in different topics that I've seen before, so I'm sure that there will be a time where this thing gets a good mention within a topic. Now, and they're mentioning that didn't this relate to the four-color graph theorem and prove something about that? It may have related to that it's at least 4. So I think that this graph may show, well, no, you can 3-color this graph. So let's see. And you can 3-color the dots. It has a chromatic number 3. It says that it has a chromatic index of 4, which means that to color the edges needs 4, and that's a different thing we'll look at later. So this doesn't necessarily prove the 4-color map theorem. It might prove something about a minimum or maximum on it, but the only way we proved it was exactly 4 for the 4-color map theorem did relate to a computer having to check a large number of graphs. So we'll come back to those in the future. Today, one of the things we're going to ask is actually a slightly different question related to imagining dots and chromatic numbers, but what they call the chromatic number of something like a plane. Like, there are other ways we could apply this concept of no colors having certain things in common. And sometimes these graphs turn into other analogies, like how we talked about a map having its things colored in, relating to a certain not crossing configuration of dots with colors. But here, we're going to ask a question about what's called the chromatic number of a plane. And what that's actually asking relates to how many ways can I color a plane so that I can color in sectors of a plane, an infinite plane with like a tiling-like thing, sort of like our tiling episode, but I'm coloring each region in. And my rule is now not going to be that no 2 colors can touch. It's going to be no 2 points on the plane that are exactly a distance of 1 apart can have the same color. So it sounds a little different now. It relates to the same concepts in graph theory and chromatic numbers, but we're going to try and visualize it like I make this shape right here, and I make this shape right here, and then I might need a little more before I put another blue, because my rule is the blues can't have any points that are 1 away from another point of the same color. Now, because planes have infinitely amount of points on them, you can't make a thing with much gaps without a crazy overlap of things to actually cover all the plane. You can't make things that are made of lines because the lines are cutting an infinitely small amount of the work. You need to color the plane. You gotta actually color in blobs, and your blobs can't have a point within them that is the 1 apart if they're the same color, but they also can't have any points that are 1 away from another blob of the same color, and you gotta fill in the whole plane. Now, if we look at a hexagonal grid, well, a hexagonal grid would be a good start to this, because if we imagine how many colors would I have to color a hexagonal grid if the hexagons themselves have their distance less than 1 across, then how many colors would I need so that the hexagons are also less than 1 away from all the other hexagons of the same color? And when we look at the hexagons, it looks like a 7 coloring of the plane proves that it must be at most 7 colors it takes, because you can do 7 colors with hexagons that are a little less than 1 across to ensure that that trait will be true. Now, they're calling this one the Hadwiger-Nelson problem, and in, layman's terms, actually, they have a good layman's terms phrase right here. How many colors are needed to color the plane so that no 2 points at unit distance, means distance of 1 apart, are the same color? Now, of course, hexagons aren't necessarily the best way to do this. That just shows us an upper bound. But they also made a weird shape right here, the Moser spindle, which under slightly more complicated proofs, here they demonstrate, that means that it must be at least 4, based on something they did there, that it can't be less than 4. Now, when we now have worked on this problem for many years, we know it's more than 4, but it hasn't been proved 5, 6, or 7 for this one. This is not the one that was solved last year. This one is still unknown between if it's 5 colors, 6 colors, or 7 colors. They even say here that the correct value may depend on the choice of axioms for set theory, which sounds pretty insane, but when you're talking about infinite sets of things, like I might have a fractal-like blob, and the fractal likeness has little line-like infinite things on it, and the plane is like a bigger infinity than the lines. Sometimes things like the axiom of choice and other set theory mechanisms actually matter. And there's some weird things with the way math's constructed where it's been proven that the sensible way to set it up has some ambiguities. Certain things that cannot be proved true or false, and that either way sort of works. And depending on which axioms we pick, it might matter, but it might not matter too. I like to think maybe we will, regardless of the set theory axioms, someday prove it is 5, 6, or 7, maybe. And that's a very simple question to have this range still unsolved. Because we know we can do it in 7, and we know we can't do it in 4, is essentially what this is saying. And it's the type of question where it's going to be in a range bounded by these things. Now, the question that actually had more work over the past year was one that Erdős wondered about, which was, we don't have to color the whole plane. We're just going to make a shape covering part of the plane in just one color. So instead of making all the colors here, let's say I just made like the blue ones or something, I'm just going to make one color. And I'm going to cover, I don't have to cover all the plane. That would obviously be impossible. There'd be parts that are 1 away of that color. But I'm just covering parts of the plane and not covering some. My goal is to cover the biggest percent of the plane I can with a certain pattern. And we're not allowed to have that same thing. Colored in part, an exact unit distance of 1 away from another colored part. So these blobs have to be less than 1 apart or across, and less than 1 apart. What's the maximum amount of the plane that I can shade in and make that happen? Well, Erdős conjectured probably 50 years ago, 40 years ago, I'm not sure how long ago that was, that when would that have been? Let's see. Would have been in the 80s or 90s or 70s maybe. So, yeah, like 40 or 50 years ago, Erdős would have conjectured this thing. It might be mentioned when he did it in the paper. And You know he's a weird guy when one of... I told you I'm going to tell you more about his weird life and habits sometime. You know he's a weird guy when one of the top people also ask is, how many hours did Erdish sleep? The implication of this is that he did not get much sleep. He was usually working on a problem. But in any case, this guy's awesome. And one of his conjectures, out of many, was that if we color the graph like that, we're coloring parts to not have any unit distance apart from each other, that the maximum that you can color is less than 1/4 of the plane, less than 25% of the plane. So he said that if we there's no coloration of the plane where you color parts and not other parts, where your pattern colors more than 25% of the plane, and where no colored parts are one away from each other exactly. Now that was unsolved for a while. The bound was ticked downward slowly and steadily. They got the bound to like, it must be under 27%, must be under like, at one point they got to like 25.5% and stuff. And last November, it looks like they solved this, baby. The density of planar sets avoiding unit distances by 5 authors here. And they say abstract is where they say sort of your synopsis of the paper. By improving upon previous estimates on a problem posed by L. Moser, Leo Moser was a cool mathematician, we prove a conjecture of Erdish that the density of any measurable planar set avoiding unit distances is less than 1/4. Our argument implies the upper bound, meaning that it must be this or less, of 0.247. So it looks like, assuming this is correct, which I believe it is, many other mathematicians have checked these things, and if a paper was out last November and has been accepted, I assume it's correct, even though I haven't read through it much, but assuming that all their arguments are correct here, we know that it's maxed out at 0.247. Now, here they're mentioning that how dense can a set be in... These are ways of describing these different regions in space in more abstract algebra-y terms. Now, they're mentioning these things about chromatic numbers, and they have to bring in the Moser spindle. And we see that there are some really complicated equations for what is known about general cases of this. Now, going down, they see the tortoise construction, and the tortoise construction is a way of answering this Erdish question that doesn't quite get to under that amount, or get high enough to be up at that amount. It's not the thing that proved it was under 1/4. But this construction does follow the rules, and I guess this would have established a lower bound. And yes, so that established a lower bound, meaning that it's at least 0.229 this percent can be covered, because that much was covered by the tortoise shape. If you repeat this forever, you've achieved 22 point something percent. Now we know it's less than 25%, so it's still not known the exact amount of space and the exact construction that maximizes it, but it's known it's in a very particular range. And they have proven the new upper bound of the range. Shout out to these guys. Awesome work. Gotta love when these open questions after a couple dozen years get solved. And while it's not solved as far as the exact percent, there's still more things we could solve about it. They answered Erdish's conjecture that it must be less than 1/4. And he's so good at guessing that stuff. How did Erdish know it was going to be less than 1/4? He was so close that like the proof so far, unless they get it much further lower, it's not far from right under 1/4. He is good at guessing this stuff, or educated guesses, when you know some of the info, which is probably what Fermat did. If you look at the last episode about Fermat's last theorem I made, make sure to check that if you haven't. It's linked in the description. But the Fermat's last theorem is, we don't know if Fermat's margin note was an educated guess or a troll, or if it was an educated guess, how educated it was. But probably something like he had an educated guess that he was a little overly confident about. Maybe he was getting really old and starting to have some hallucinations. I don't know. Maybe he was trying to prank the world. Or maybe there's like a one-page paper that's a brilliant proof of Fermat's last theorem that he lost somewhere. But that's sort of part of why it inspires a lot of people to think that their one-page papers of Fermat's last theorem are correct, and they're not always. So be careful, even if you hear that someone like Fermat says they had a one-page theorem of something. If you come up with a one-page paper of one of these old classic proofs, be ready for some criticism, because it'll be pretty surprising if some of these things get solved in a paper shorter than this. Now, but you never know. They did the aperiodic monotile episode from not long ago did show that sometimes you can just have a very innovative little breakthrough. However, the hobbyist mathematician who found the cool shapes did work with several more studied mathematicians to actually write up the findings in a correct way. He knew that he didn't have the expertise to write it in the proper form. And the paper demonstrating that it must be true for their shape that he found is similar length to this. Now, here are all of our different things, and by the end we have shown this. The upper bound is less than 0.2470. Or 0.24699 and maybe a bunch more nines, if that's what they mean by that. In any case, around 0.247. So that's a neat open problem, which just was solved last November, and could even have more solving as we prove the exact amount, where it is. Is it 23? Is it 24? 24 and a half? What is the maximum amount of the plane that we can cover like that? Who knows so far? Now, somebody asked which clock is right. I don't know at the moment if any clocks are right. I purposefully stop them for many reasons. If a working clock makes its way into the classroom, you better believe I'll have that thing stopped before long. But these clocks will pass the correct time twice a day, and that's arguably better than the wannabe correct clocks that are always a millisecond fast or always a millisecond slow. These bad things are always right twice a day. Perfectly right. So when you see a clock in the background, that is the time that it currently is for you, or the time that you think it currently is for me. Leave a comment. Or if you even see one that the minute is right, you could look up which time zone that clock is currently accurate for. I would love to see comments when you notice one that's right at the given moment. That would actually be cool to program, a stopped clock that does know what time it is, so it rings when it is the stopped clock time. Someday, instead of selling some dumb old merchandise like the normal type a lot of YouTubers do, like maybe we'll sell a shirt or something someday, but if I ever sell a type of merchandise, I want to sell some good clocks, some new and improved clocks. You better believe they'll have zeros on top instead of 12s. And my goal for the new and improved clock will be, I want one that has 3 modes on the back. I want you to be able to flip it between forward, stopped, and backward. Now, ideally, we could even have 5 switches: double speed forward, normal forward, stopped, backward, double speed backward. Something like that would be extra cool. So someday I'll work with a clockmaker and design the better clock. There will also be an episode before long that is going to be about the better clock. Gonna be about an extension of my thoughts about why zeros should be on top of clocks, extended to other aspects of timekeeping and even calendars. We'll come back to our calendar roasts in that one. So we'll make a new and improved clock someday. Now, somebody said a 24-hour clock, and some of the clocks we make will be 24 hours because that's much smarter. Other ones may do strange things. What if you had a clock? Now, there's just one option, but what if you had a clock that went forward for 12 hours, then backward for 12 hours, forward for 12 hours, backward for 12 hours? Then you'd get your 24 in an interesting one. Oh, that's what you commented that too, have forward, backwards. Yes, so something like that is a great thought. There are other ways we could establish that. And one thing that will come up in our Designing a Better Clock episode, if anyone wants to ponder on their own in the meantime, is if you were to incorporate negative numbers on a clock, which things would you turn into which negative number? And how could that help the clock, possibly? So maybe clocks should have negative numbers. We'll go into that in an episode before long. Now, here we've looked at a few coloration problems. There are many other fun coloration things we can look at. I need to run to the bathroom real quick, but I'll leave it on one of the more visual parts of this paper. Let's see what is the best for you folks to read. Here, you got to understand this while I'm gone. You're going to have a test on this after I'm back. No, I'm kidding. We'll go to one of the ones that's actually understandable. Here, we'll look at the tortoise construction. And we'll make this a little bigger in case a squirrel comes by. Okay, I got to run to the bathroom. I'll be back very soon, and we're going to look at some more fun things. Alright folks, we're back and we brought some nuts for the squirrels. Do squirrels eat almonds? Let's make sure that squirrels like almonds first, because I know they like pecans, or pecans, however you choose to pronounce that. I know they like walnuts, but I like to keep the squirrels healthy. You got to give them unsalted nuts, for example, otherwise they get a little dehydrated. And squirrels, almonds, let's look up. Can squirrels... In moderation, yes. So we don't want to give them a crazy amount of almonds. Might be a little fatty for the squirrels or something, but it says in moderation, squirrels can eat almonds. So let's give them a couple. Now, I know that with most wild animals, you don't want to feed them because if you're out in a park or out in the forest and there's a bunch of deer and you feed the deer, and everybody feeds the deer, they don't learn to hunt or to gather on their own. They have to learn some survival instincts that are removed from them when you do that. Additionally, some foods are bad for the animals, like feeding bread to certain types of bird is actually bad for some types of bird. And so you got to be careful when you feed wild animals. You want them to know how to hunt on their own. But these squirrels are not going to be doing some great hunting. These squirrels are just begging from all the neighbors. They're probably eating trash and stuff. They eat all the fruits from my yard. Not all of them. They don't pick the trees clean, so I don't mind. But they have a nice little buffet come summertime. So I don't think we're doing anything problematic by giving these squirrels some healthy food to mix in with their thieving diets. Not thieving in a nice way. They're gatherers. And I love these squirrels. They're so awesome. So let's give them some nuts. The squirrels keep coming by. They come by more often when I'm not talking. And so when I'm talking, the squirrels... Like if I'm filming a scene with a camera person, the squirrels are less likely to come by because I'm talking loudly. And then when I'm setting up a scene, we're not talking always. Like me and say Carlo, my main camera guy, will be like setting up stuff on the desk and such, making sure all the clocks that have fallen are rehung. And the squirrels will come by and it'll be like, dear, start filming. Like, get the squirrel, start filming. Trying not to scare the squirrel away. Sometimes I'll see one and I'll be like, squirrel, because I don't want to like scare it away. Like, there's a squirrel, start filming. So we got to make sure it works. For those who want to see more Carlo, you'll get a fun cameo of my main camera guy in the snack break that's coming a few episodes from now. He did a good challenge in our fruit peel eating episode. Won't say what it is. We'll keep that as a surprise, but I'll say that while we were filming, I was like, in addition to what I'll pay you for today is helping me film, I'll give you an extra $20 if you want to try and do this so-and-so challenge with fruit. And he did it, and he achieved it, and he won. And he got $20 for doing something pretty cool for the episode. So we're gonna get a cool Carlo cameo in that one. It relates to, it's not the next episode. We're doing Colat's Conjecture first. But then the edible peels episode might be next. Yes, I am holding up a kiwi because, yep. That peel's edible. People think I'm crazy when I take a bite right out of the kiwi. It's like, what's wrong with that? Tastes kind of good. Not a bad peel. Now, other thoughts in the comments are related to clocks. In addition to clocks having negative numbers, another thing we might cover in that episode to keep an eye out on is, what if clocks had fractions? So, those are a few things to ponder. What if clocks had negative? The first, most obvious one, but make sure you think through it, is what if clocks had a 0 somewhere on them? Where would it go and what would it achieve? That one is, I've ranted about that before. It's obvious clocks should have a 0 on them. The other ones are more experiments, more, maybe we should consider about negative numbers and fractions being used as part of clocks. So those are some things you can consider. That'll probably be like 5 or 10 episodes from now. We'll do one about designing clocks. We also should design some clocks because some of the classic clocks are breaking around combo class. These things are past their prime, but breaking on purpose because our goal for things is not to let things sit there being all boring, doing nothing for a million years of survival. Our goal for items is to use them. And sometimes the use around the combo class is creating a strange, engaging environment for me to teach in. And so these things get an accelerated lifespan, but one full of historic notability. And I will be checking. I always mention you could send your extra clocks to the mailbox. I haven't checked in a few weeks, but I am going this Friday. So 2 days from now, I'm going to the mailbox to see what people sent. We may have more weird clocks or random toys, or who knows. Sometimes we've gotten some very fun, cool things around the mailbox. Let's see if we can see any of the I'll grab the toys and display more of those later. There's also a bird feeder thing I'm setting up that was related to the mailbox that will be cool to present before long. And if anyone has a broken clock or extra dice, feel free to send those to the mailbox in the address. I'll check there every week or two. And you will let your things have an accelerated lifespan, but one full of historic remembrance. Now, thank you all for joining me. We've been looking at some strange coloration traits and some different sorts of graphs. And in general, let's just look a little more about what types of chromatic numbers we could have, as well as trying to visualize those. And here we can see a coloration that is required to have no two of the same color touching for different sorts of shapes. Let's pull open the thing on Wolfram Math World. Now, here we can see if I have a complete graph where all of them are touching, like I said, we need to have that many colors. They all need to be a different color. If I have this sort of graph where one thing's at the center and everything else is spiking out, I only need 2 colors. What about these sorts of graphs? Well, this is displaying the chromatic number of it, the minimum amount of colors to achieve that they all get a color and no two of the same color are touching. What about if they're on like a cycle around the edge of a regular polygon? Doesn't have to be regular, it could be smushed or crunched, but what if they have this sort of connection structure? Well, it actually depends on if there's an even or odd amount. If I have an even amount of dots, I can just use 2 colors, A, B, A, B, A, B, and I'm back to A, and it works. If there's an odd amount, I get screwed. Like A, B, A, B. Oh, I can't put an A because then that's AA, and I can't put a B or that's BB. So I need to put a C. So here they have a chart that mentions a few of those. A complete graph with n vertices, with this is the graph theory nickname, K with a little n, has n for its chromatic number. A star graph, which is the sort where they're all spiking out from the center, has a chromatic number of 2. A cycle graph, where they're all on a line around here, sort of. 3 if it's odd, and 2 if it's even. A wheel graph, which is similar but with a center, where we have a center connected to all these outside guys. And they give them nicknames based on what they look like. Like it looks kind of like a wheel. The other ones look kind of like a star and stuff. Is 3 for odd and 4 for even. This is flipped which one has a larger amount, and it's also just a little higher amount it takes. Now, well, for odd it's the same, but even is on the other end of it. Now, we can make chromatic numbers for any sort of graph. And sometimes the edges are what we color, but in this case, we're coloring the vertices or nodes themselves. We could envision this as analogies as well. Like, let's say that we have a variety of different animals, and we have different ones that have become friends with each other, but no two of the same species has become friends with each other. They've all become friends with different species of animal. Now, with a given amount of animals, knowing which types are friendships and how many there are, what species could it be? Well, there's sort of the minimum number they're looking for with our chromatic numbers. Now, a lot of fun stuff to look at when we go here, and graph theory has a lot of fun nicknames as well, which we looked at one point. There are things called like a banana graph. Let's look up, like there's a caterpillar graph. And they have like lobster graph. So here's like a caterpillar graph. Hey, look, I'm a little caterpillar growing. Here's lobster graph. Hey, look, I'm a lobster growing. These are different lobster graphs of different sizes. There was one called the banana tree graph. I love the names of these things. The banana tree graph. That's nice. Look at my banana tree. Now, and look, I love the graph theory nicknames. Banana trees are graceful. Now, banana trees are graceful could be a statement that's a naturalist, like, say, David Attenborough would make. Banana trees are graceful. They live in the... but it's also a mathematical statement right here that needed a citation. These are two different papers that mathematically demonstrate the statement that banana trees are graceful. And that's because a banana tree graph is a particular type that has a definition, and graceful is a sort of graph that is gracefully labeled. These are ones where we can label each node and with non-negative integers from 0 to m, and the graph edges are labeled with the absolute differences between node values. I haven't studied this one yet. So graceful labelings we'll look more into in the future. Quite interesting. But basically they have proven that banana trees are graceful. How nice is that? There's other sorts of tree graphs as well. And they have branches. And they use terms that describe what they look like. It's sort of funny because yesterday we were noting that when we do XY coordinate plane graph, or 2 days ago maybe, XY coordinate plane graphs are often reminiscent of strange things from nature. Oh, it looks like an eye, it looks like a flower and such. Well, same thing with these graphs. Now, of course, we could, this sort of graph theory, put the nodes wherever we want, but putting them in the simplest form, or sometimes even purposefully, the form that resembles something like a tree or an animal, because that sticks in the brain better and helps us enumerate them better. Can be cool. And so we get all sorts of good nicknames in these of different sorts of graphs that can be put in a way that looks like something memorable. You get forests. These are forests, and they are related to what are called trees. Here they say connected forests are trees. So you gotta love those statements that are provable. How about a pseudo-forest? Well, here you get a pseudo-forest, where a pseudo-tree is a connected pseudo-forest and forest. A pseudo-tree is a connected pseudo-forest, and a forest is a trivial pseudo-forest. So, quite interesting. Let's just look at where was one of the other places that had so many of these great nicknames. Graph theory, names of graphs. I love the ones that have these different names. Now, some of them are just named after people. Like, cycle makes sense. Dodecahedron makes sense. But these are named after people, such as one that I won't pronounce because our stream, we don't want YouTube to get mad. And icosahedron, these just get their nicknames. Utility graph. Where's the ones with our extra fun nicknames? Come on, folks. You're cutting out all of the fun right there. Now, list of graphs here. These are some good pictures. These are just an example of one sort of this. Most of these are families of things, like a butterfly graph isn't just... Well, no, butterfly graph is just this one, I guess. But some of these are families. So that's a little confusing because, for example, the caterpillar graphs can be many different things. There's even caterpillar trees. Man, the fact that there's a proven thing about things called caterpillar trees is just awesome. And you got non-caterpillar trees as well. But here you get your diamonds. You get your all sorts of good stuff. We already did one where I was joking about a lot of these names. So we can skip that for today and just take a quick stroll through how cool they are and how many different rare names show up. The utility graphs, we can relate to a problem with the 3 utilities. You ever heard this problem where, let's say I have 3 houses and then 3 types of utility like gas, water, electricity or something that have to each be connected to each house, but I'm on a flat plane, which is not how pipes work. You can connect gas under the other gas pipe, but let's say we're in a flat plane, we're trying to do this, and we can't have any of them cross. Here they put it in a simpler to view way, but let's say that I could, connect these ones all the way on the outside. Well, it's not possible on a flat surface to connect 3 houses to 3 utilities without any crossing. You can, however, do it on a donut, a torus shape. So maybe we'll do a 3 utilities video or stream at some point in the future. So already some cool YouTube videos about that, but we'll do my take on that at some point. Some of those topics that some people may already know because they've been on other big math YouTubers channels, those are ones I wait to do until I have a unique thing to add. I assume my viewers might already watch like the more popular videos on YouTube, and there's some good ones about the 3 utilities problem out there. But if you don't watch any other math YouTube, then that's even extra fun. Then you're seeing all this for even more of the first time. But a lot of fun graphs. A lot of great stuff going on here. I wish that it was not... You got gears, helms, lobsters, webs. I wish it was not called graphs, or that the XY coordinate plane thing was not called graphs. There are so many words in the language. We don't need to call 2 main different things in math graphs. They're in fact so different because although this gets translated into a graph theory question of putting them on a plane in particular spots, when we actually translate it and ask about these dots, I can put them wherever I want. It's just about how they're connected. And so that's completely different from the XY coordinate plane graphs where the exact thing that matters is where it lands. We're defining which exact spot to put a thing, as opposed to, I can put them wherever I want. It's about the way they're connected. So I kind of wish that those were not both called graphs, but they are. What can you do? And this is a useful thing maybe if you ever want to learn more about this topic. Glossaries. We've never talked about that, but a glossary is a good type of thing. It gives you a little sentence or two about many of the main words in a topic. Like here we got Wikipedia's version of a glossary of graph theory. So kind of like how I recommend encyclopedias. If you ever want to get into a topic, glossaries don't hurt. Those give you a little sentence about many of the terms you may encounter. And, I'm a fan of Wikipedia. Don't quote this in your research papers. Don't use this as your reference if you're writing something that would need a citation. But I'm a big fan of it for just getting a general overview of subjects. Now, like for your starting point, sort of to see which subjects you like enough to want to do further research, to read more in-depth papers about. How am I supposed to know which in-depth papers to look up unless I have a sort of overview encyclopedia as my intro? Or, of course, a teacher or friend or whatever, but, encyclopedias can be teachers and friends. So, a lot of great questions and comments. I am going to wrap up our stream before long because I want to do some editing on the Kolats episode. I also want to cut together some bonus footage for my Patreon people because I haven't put much up on Patreon this month. But a reminder that exists for people who want to support the show and see cool bonus stuff. And I'm going to cut together some stuff today and tomorrow to put some more bonus stuff on there for the month because I haven't been posting as much on there, but I have a lot of cool bonus footage for those people. There's also, like I mentioned earlier, a cool Discord for all the combo lords and a subreddit and stuff like that. And of course, the main thing to make sure you're tuned into is the main combo class channel. Despite this having more subscribers, and it will probably continue to because I'm going to be posting the shorts on here, and the shorts draw in a larger number of subscribers. Although I don't know if they necessarily draw a larger number of true diehard viewers than the other videos or not. Hard to gauge. But this channel will probably continue to have more subscribers. The random experiments to me include shorts, and to other people, those are pitched way more and are the whole world. But make sure that you watch some horizontal videos once in a while, and that if you like those, which obviously you must if you're here because this is that form, watch the combo class ones. That's where my best, coolest content goes. The newest one is linked in the description. And the next one about the Kolats conjecture will be coming in just a few days. And then a week after that or so, we'll have one about edible peel conspiracies. And then some other fun things. So, I'm going to go now and work on that stuff. But I love you all. Hope you all have a marvelous day or night. And I'll catch you in the next one.